doing. Here's how we're getting this started. This is the Milli Maker special edition Fantasy Fling DFS podcast. We are going to be bringing this to you weekly as we do the Milli Maker contest. So what we're going to do is we're going to roll a dice, and we got certain stacks tied to a number. So 5 different stacks every week. And the first number that you roll, that's the stack that you get. So number 1, we have Dallas and Los Angeles Chargers. The second stack, we got Tennessee and Seattle. Third stack, we got Atlanta and Tampa Bay. Fourth stack, we got Minnesota and Arizona. And fifth stack, we got San Francisco and Philly. So Paul, what number did you roll?
I just rolled a 3.
A 3. All right. So I'm going to let you go ahead and get started on your game stack. Now, the thing is you can build a lineup any way you want, but you have to have some sort of a team stack, a game stack, whatever it may be, with the number that you rolled. So Paul's got Atlanta Bay. I'm pretty sure that's going to be easy for him. He seems to like some players from those games. Eric,
Okay.
You're next, sir.
You ready? All right,
let's
let's
go ahead and get us started.
Roll this bad boy. All right. Now, no joke. I was joking about it earlier about being number 1, but I rolled 1, which is Dallas and the Chargers. I like that stack a lot.
So you got the one. You got the one that everybody wants to get.
And I know exactly who I'm playing.
All right.
All right. Not quite exactly. But
oh, this couldn't be any easier. I rolled number 2.
Oh, you got Tennessee and Seattle.
Yeah. Numeral duo. All right. So basically, while Eric and Paul are building their lineups, what I'm going to get going on here is, the whole reasoning for the show. So back in December, I was listening to a podcast, basically DFS Army. They are one of our partners. They have 36 plus winners of over 100K subscribers for various DFS contests. So they're basically their main person, Geek, their CEO, Geek, he was saying something like, y'all need to be replaying old matches in your head at night. He's like, this should keep you up at night. He's like, the girl from Queen's Gambit. He's like, you should be replaying old matches in your head. Now, maybe you don't do it on the ceiling like she did, because you got to be on drugs to do that. But regardless, you need to be replaying old matchups in your head. This is a game of statistics. You have to do the back testing. This is the only way to be better. This is what it takes to be successful. So that's the back test. And I really thought about that. And, I was like, he's right. This is a game of statistics. And every time someone tells you, you should stack this game, you should do this, you should do that, the reason for that is because it's been done in the past. So, that is what has been proven. Those are the trends, and that's what they're trying to get you to follow. So if you have the best success, you have a correlated lineup that can actually take down one of these big cheap PPs. So what I did was I went and looked at all the Milli Maker winners from all 16 weeks of the NFL season last year. Now, obviously there's 17 weeks, but most people don't even play that last week anyway. So I went over the 16 winners of the Milli Maker, and I was looking for trends. So here's what I found out. Now, you can find this on fantasyfootballfling.com. I basically wrote down an article. We looked at pricing for every position. We looked at rostership, ownership, roster ownership. We looked at stacking trends. Everything you can possibly think of, we looked at for this, just trying to identify different trends. So we'll start with this. Number 1, stacking trends. You have to stack in DFS. If you don't stack and you win a big GPP, it's an extreme outlier. There's just no other way to put it. So if you're looking to take down this contest, with thousands of people, hundreds of thousands of people, you have to have some sort of stack. So through 16 weeks of the 2020 season, there was a stack with 2 or more players from the same game and 100% of the winning Milli Maker lineups. There was a stack with 3 or more players from the same game and 81% of the winning lineups. There was a stack with 4 more players from the same game and 43% of the winning Milli Maker lineups. So basically, if you didn't have a stack with at least 2 players from the same game, you might as well have just burned your money because you had no chance of winning the Milli Maker. The second thing we looked at, roster ownership projections. One of the factors in building a lineup for a massive GPP, it's not what is most likely to happen. This is where being a smart football fan can kind of be a detriment. You think this is the most likely thing to happen. These are the players I'm going to pick. There's a lot of smart people who watch football and they all think the same thing. So how are you going to be different? This is a lineup that you're trying to beat out 500,000 plus lineups. This isn't you and your home lineup against your buddies. Okay. This is 500,000 plus. So you have to think what is maybe not crazy probable, but still possible. This is how you can win a contest like this. So for example, over the 16 weeks, the lowest ownership percentage, total ownership percentage was 66%, which is crazy low. High is 73%. However, over the course of the season, 14 out of 16 weeks, the ownership was below 130%. So if you're trying to take down the Milli Maker, this is something you need to keep in mind. Try to keep it below 133%. Apart from total ownership, one of the biggest factors you need to consider is what is the field doing? You need to zig when they zag. In a contest like this, a massive GPP, you have to fade the chalk, as they say. Let's say you are looking at doing Seattle on a stack and the field is stacking Wilson and Metcalf. You could probably get leverage by doing Wilson and Lockett, or maybe you go the other side and you bring it back with Lockett or Metcalf. But you go to like an lower ownership side on the other side, lower ownership projection. So you have to be thinking about what they're doing and how you can get different when building your lineups. The next thing, overthinking the flex spot. I can't count how many times I've done this in the past. You have the flexes you want. You've identified some stud one-off in a great matchup. And then you're like, well, what do I do in the flex? Do I do running back? Do I do wide receiver? Maybe this is tight end week. Maybe I do Kelsey, but with a value tight end. So over 16 weeks, 19% of the winning lineups had a tight end in the flex spot. 25% of the winning lineups had a running back in the flex spot. 56% of the winning lineups had a wide receiver in the flex spot. When in doubt, the answer is a wide receiver. It's like picking C in a multiple choice. It's not really that complicated if you think about it. The NFL is a passing game, so wide receiver, there are more of them line up on the field, and that's going to create some value. So chances are you're going to want to go wide receiver if you really have no one that you've clearly identified in that flex spot. So the next thing we looked at, positional pricing. Over the 16 weeks, I kind of looked at this. I was basically looking for trends. So the quarterbacks, weeks 1 through 8, the average QB price in the winning Milli Maker contest was $7,250. So it was quite a bit pricier than it was later in the season. Weeks 9 through 16, it dropped to $6,400. Why the difference? Well, in all 16 weeks, the salary cap does not change. So if you shift away from spending money on one position, that's obviously going to lead to more money elsewhere. Now, more on that later, but the average money spent on the running back positions in week 1 through 8 was $6,793. From weeks 9 to 16, it was $7,100. So not a huge difference. But the average spent on the wide receiver position would have been $5,900 in 1 through 8 and $5,978 in weeks 1 through 16. So that pretty much stayed the same. Now, however, the tight end position did decline with the average price of the QB, as it was $5,100 in the first 8 weeks and then averaged $3,900 the rest of the season. So one reason in my theory for this was high price running backs, studs like Henry, Cook, and Kamara. If you have those guys and you're paying up for them, it makes more sense to find a pay down option at quarterback, tight end, to have one of those studs in your lineup. How are you going to do this? Well, maybe you find a quarterback who's thrust in the lineup. He's a backup, but he has running ability. He has a high floor, and he's less price. So the Hurts of the world, the Taysom Hills, those are the guys that were in a couple of the Milli Maker lineups, and that is how you would go about achieving that. So basically, the idea is here you have to zig when others zag. Last thing, as far as defenses, as far as other contests, it really doesn't make a whole lot of difference. It's very volatile, but I did find in the Milli Maker, 11 out of the 16 winning lineups had a top 10 ranked defense. The other winners were usually subpar defenses and great matchups, like first Dallas, because come on, if they don't have Dak, they pretty much suck. And Burrow-less Bengals last year, or Wentz, basically. If you went against Wentz last year and you had a good defense against Wentz, you did well. Next thing, the ceiling. Dude, if you're going to play in the Milli Maker, you have to have a lot of points. You can basically, if you're trying to win the Milli Maker, you have to have a ceiling that can beat 250 points. This may mean you're not going to score over 100. You have to have like high variance players who can take it to that next level. You also, like, if you're trying to win the Milli Maker, you're basically trying to win or not cash at all. If you're trying to cash, you're just not doing it right. So last thing I want to identify is the ceiling. In 16 weeks, the low winning score was 270 points. The high was 279 points. The average actually was 243. So if you're shooting for a target to win the Milli Maker, you're basically trying to score 250 points. So if you're building a lineup of 9 players, you basically need them to average 27.77, almost 28 points a game. With that, so you're obviously going to target high floor players with high ceilings, and you're trying to go for the right game environment. You can bring high variance players who don't have high floor, but they're really cheap and maybe they hit their ceiling. You're trying to bring them along so that you can get that 250. So that said, you kind of, for example, let's take a look at, I believe, week 1 of the Milli Maker lineup of 2020. The target was a Green Bay, Minnesota game stack. This had Rodgers, this had Adams, this had Thielen, this had Lazard. It's clear. Rodgers, Adams, Thielen, these players have floor and ceiling. They combined for 83 points. They hit that average. It was 37 points, actually, between the three of them. The average in the game script was enough to bring a low flare player like Adam Lazard to his ceiling, almost at least, with 18 points. This brought their 4-player average of 32 points. So this combined game stack more than smashed. And what you kind of look up at this point is all the game stacks did everything they needed to do. So now you're just trying to find one-offs that can really just bring it home for you. So what he was able to do, and our last podcast, I just ripped most of it apart and said it was a weak mentally decision to even start him. But you start a player like Mostert, for example, who was in a good matchup. He was low price, low owned, 5,800, 8% ownership. He got 25 points. The same for Josh Jacobs. These are 2 players. They don't need to be correlated. They're running backs. They can bring it home themselves. Jacobs, 6,800. He got 35 points. Washington football team defense going against Wentz, 15 points. That's all you needed. 255 points. This is basically how you do it. It's a combination of everything, of total roster percentage. You got high floor, high ceiling players and the proper game stacks. That's how you bring it home. So all that said, guys, we're going to be breaking this down every single week. This is what happened last year. These were the trends. Let's talk about what we had last week. And hey, do you guys have your lineups done?
Ready to go. Good to go.
Ready to roll? Okay.
Yeah.
So what we're going to be doing, not only are we going to bring this to you every week, this is the first episode that we're doing this. So we're just kind of breaking down what we did in 2020. Trust me, we're not going to go over that every week. But what we are going to do is we're going to go over the Milli Maker winners from the prior week, see what they're doing, see those trends, see what we can learn from those trends. And we're going to build our own lineups the same way. We're going to roll the dice, build those lineups, build those stacks, keep all those things in mind as we build our lineups. And we also are going to do our own bets. So whoever we got to do weekly bets. Whoever has the top performing lineup in the Milli Maker. And listeners, if you all want to get involved in this, we can do a little side pool. So just let us know. But before I have Eric and Paul give us their lineups, let's just go over the two winning Milli Maker lineups last week. No, it's the first week of the season. They normally will run a couple contests. Maybe do a $5 contest. Maybe they do a $20 contest. Sometimes they'll do like a 50, so on and so forth. But last week, we did definitely have some stacks. Now, these were some creative stacks. So we had two winners, BL Brown, 1994 on DraftKings, and then Mike MC. So first off, BL Brown had Joe Burrow as his quarterback, came through with 18 points. Now, he ended up scoring a total of 222 points. If you saw last week, there was 130-point lineups that cashed. There was 142-point lineups that cashed. So, I mean, it was a low-scoring week. Definitely not hitting that 250 plus, but 206, 222, that's what did it last week. So Burrow, and he did a game stack with Burrow, with Mixon, and with T. Higgins. So we basically had a quarterback, running back, and wide receiver, which, geez, I mean, it didn't happen at all last year. So definitely an outlier. Melvin Gordon, he also had his other running back, and Melvin Gordon busted off that 70-yard run for a touchdown. He also, the crazy thing was, not only did he have a game stack with three players, one running back and wide receiver and the quarterback from the same team, but he stacked Tyreek Hill and Travis Kelce together. Now, I can't tell you how many times I've had some of the experts say that Hill and Kelce aren't positively correlated with one another, but they certainly were last week. And then he also had Deebo Samuel, which, this past offseason, it was like, do you like Samuel? Do you like Ayuk? Who do you want? Well, Ayuk is in the doghouse, and apparently the Kyle Shanahan doghouse is not a good place to be. Sermon and Ayuk are in there together, probably drinking a bottle of whiskey. But Deebo Samuel, and he got it last week. And then Marvin Jones in Jacksonville doing his thing, being low price, coming up big. He also, I think he had 18 points on DraftKings. And then the Cardinals D, as we talked about earlier on our last podcast, they had 16 points. So couple game stacks here for sure. A couple one-offs. Very impressive. Very impressive. The other winning lineup that we had, Patrick Mahomes, again, with Kelce and Hill. So that one was actually, the double stack with Mahomes, and then he had Melvin Gordon, he had Mixon. Wow, he actually played. How do you play Callaway and win $1 million? I mean, he scored 2 points, just nuts. Corey Davis, Marvin Jones, and the Bengals D. So again, stacks are what do it in the Milli Maker in Big Field GPP. Speaking of stacks, Eric, Paul, y'all got your stacks?
Yeah, man.
I'm gonna let you go over those, and I'm going to build my lineup right quick.
Absolutely. I rolled the stack of the Dallas Chargers game. I played around with it for a bit, but the obvious choice I think would have been, Prescott's is $100 more than I guess pricing doesn't matter that much, but man, he puts up points. So I have Prescott as my quarterback. I stacked him with CeeDee Lamb, and instead of going for Cooper, which is probably the most higher percentage play, I went with Cedric Wilson, who's playing in place of Michael Gallup, who's out. So I have Dak, Lamb, Wilson, and I followed up with the bring back of Calvin Ridley, because I feel like he's destined to explode in that game against as well. And the other ones I added on top of that were, I also stacked in, I guess, it's not a stack per se, but Austin Eckler. I think he's going to play a big role. Jonathan Taylor, and I rounded out with Tyler Higbee, not T Higgins, Tyler Higbee in the tight end. And as you mentioned in your article, that 56%, I think it was, of the flex wins the receiver position. So I chose Tim Patrick as my flex. And I didn't realize last week that the Milli Maker was a Bengals D, but I chose the Bengals D because they're playing against Andy Dalton. So to reiterate the lineup, it's Prescott stacked with Lamb and Wilson. I also have Eckler and Ridley in that game, Jonathan Taylor, Higbee, Tim Patrick, and the Bengals D. And I have
Nice.
100. Usually I don't even, with these type of things, I don't hit my remaining salary. I'm at like usually a lot left over, but I'm at 100 right now. So here you go.
Okay. Paul.
Okay, this
what
took
do you think?
some tinkering, took me a bit. I have the Bucks. So this is the direction I went. Tom Brady. That's going to be part of the stack. Mike Evans is part of the stack. I think Mike Evans is going to go off this week.
Okay.
Ezekiel Elliott, David Montgomery as my two backs. Then Marvin Jones Jr., Noah Fant, and Najee Harris with the Dolphins D.
Najee Harris. Okay.
Najee Harris is I think the highest chalk available right now, but you never know.
All right.
Who is your flex, Paul?
My flex, Najee Harris was my flex.
Oh, okay. Who are your two running backs? I'm sorry.
Ezekiel Elliott and David Montgomery.
Okay. I got Montgomery and the Zeke. Got it.
All right. So, I mean, I put this together like mad quick because you guys obviously were just chilling while I was talking. So, I drew, I rolled number 2, which set me up for Tennessee and Seattle. So, I like Tannehill. I was looking at his ownership. It's low. He's 6,300. It's 3.96%. He's in a high scoring game. He's a good way to get leverage off of. I mean, just like the overall field is definitely going to be leaning more towards Dak. They're going to be leaning more towards Herbert, as we talked in the last podcast. Wilson isn't going to be high owned either. But if that game goes away, I need it to go based on these stacks. I got Tannehill. I got Julio Jones, who pretty much did 0 last week. I like the stud coming off of dud. Julio, I mean, he just got kicked to the curb by his old team. He did nothing last week. If there's a stud who needs to prove anything, it's Julio. So I like him. I also stacked Lockett in that game, just because he's a little bit cheaper than Metcalf, and he's also coming in at lower ownership percentage. The other guy that I've been kind of eyeing because he pretty much did nothing last week, and he's also in another high-scoring game, is Justin Jefferson. I like him as a one-off this week. If that game goes away, it should. First off, nobody thinks that Thielen is better than Jefferson, okay? But Thielen had a better week than Jefferson last week. So it's not an overreaction, but I do think that Jefferson is a one-off in a high-scoring game could actually end up producing. I also like Chubb. We talked about it. He is coming in low ownership. He's an absolute smash spot against Houston. So I am definitely willing to play him as a one-off. That said, the Broncos are in a good position against Jacksonville. I don't know. Maybe that game can go off a little bit. I don't think so, but it's the Milli Maker. We got to get a little silly here. I definitely like Fant in this position. He's only 4,200. It's pretty cheap. So I like him. You lose Judy. Who's it going to be? Is it going to be Sutton? Is it going to be Patrick? Is it going to be Hamler? He was definitely targeted Fant last week. So I like him, and also like him with Carlos Hyde. Carlos Hyde is certainly he's second in line, but his ownership projections are not high. So if I can basically do a mini stack of that game with Fant and Hyde, I'm willing to do that. And then last thing, I basically just punted the position. I got the Texans. So $2,000. The Texans did good last week against Jacksonville. Let's not get too carried away. But Cleveland, let's not act like Baker Mayfield is Tom Brady. He's not. He could definitely throw some picks, so you never know. So basically, Tannehill, Chubb, and then Javonte Williams, I should have mentioned in that Broncos game. So I did do a little bit of a mini stack. I got Javonte Williams. He got the same amount of carries last week as Melvin Gordon, and he looks good. So I got Chubb, Williams, Jefferson, and then my main stack was Tannehill, Julio Jones, and Lockett. Rounding it out,
Jefferson.
Fant,
Yeah.
Hyde, Tech.
I got to make one change to my lineup real quick. You made me think about Najee Harris, and I was like, man, I can't do it. I took him out.
Tinkering.
I'm sorry, they're stinkering. They're stinkering. I got time for Tinker. I got all the time for Tinker.
I should say
Jarvis Landry's in with the OBJ app. So Jarvis Landry in for Najee Harris.
The main reason we're doing this podcast, okay, is everyone likes that lottery ticket, that chance for one Sunday afternoon to change your life, okay? And there are certain trends that you can follow with this for sure. All that said, sometimes it can be just crazy looking at all the different ways you can stack all the different games. And it's like, do I stack this game? Do I stack that game? I don't know. Really, you're flipping a coin. You're rolling a dice. You have to pick the right game to stack. Nobody knows. We think we know. We don't know. So we're sitting here. We're rolling a dice. And then you're forced to stack that game and to just shove players in here and there. Some guys that you think might be in a good, situation for that one game. That's really what it comes down to. It's a lottery ticket. So that's how we're going to play. Guys, what are we going to do for the wager this week? It's week one.
Well, I'm going to come pick you up in my Lamborghini on Tuesday. So just let me know.
On Tuesday? So, yeah.
Or Monday, I guess. Shit. Be ready.
So, Eric, you definitely got the best stack. So I'm going to need some odds here. I'm going to need like 2-1 odds, 3-1 odds. I mean, you have the best chance.
We're looking for a best overall score, right?
We're talking about the field. Yeah, the best overall. But we also have to preface by saying you're building a lineup that could count 500,000 people. But your lineup, you have the best stack for sure to beat out two people. So what are we betting here?
I do have.
We should get some odds here.
But if I were to play the odds, I would have gone with Amari Cooper instead of Cedric Wilson. But with that being said,
okay.
Fair enough. I went with I would have got if I were like, I would have gone with like Dak plus Amari plus Cooper, But I went with Dak plus CeeDee Lamb plus Cedric Wilson. Yeah. So I went a little out there because you don't ever know. He's had some good games, but I don't know the odds. Maybe it's not that. I mean, if I were to take a full advantage of it, I would have gone with the two big receivers. But like maybe a minus 80. It's pretty low. Maybe minus 100. So like 2-1.
Okay. $50. Was that what we got on this week or what?
I don't know. It's a good question. I'm trying to deposit cash right now on the DraftKings.
Take my money.
We'll be back. I think the results of the Milli Maker winner, how we did, what we learned, and what we can do going forward for next week.
There's definitely a lot to learn for sure. Cheers, gentlemen. Appreciate this. There's a lot to learn moving forward. Like there's always room to improve and get better. So,
yeah.
I will win.
I'm about to put
And,
my lineup in for $20. It's about to happen.
Cheers to the
Here
winner.
it is.
This guy. Right there.
Enter for 20. You sure? If yes, click again. Yep.
All right.
It
All right,
is
gentlemen.
in.
Well,
I'm
we'll talk
officially
soon.
in.
We'll talk next week when I win.
All right.
Yeah.
Yeah. Lamborghini's coming.